Imagine you are staring at a completely blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like, not a canvas for a painting, but a blueprint.
Right.
And your task, your only task, is to design human civilization completely from scratch.
That is quite the design brief, honestly.
It really is.
A literal blank page with, no pre-existing structures, no legacy systems, and just zero historical baggage to weigh you down.
Yeah, it's the ultimate what-if scenario.
Yeah.
So welcome to today's deep dive, where we're looking at this really fascinating philosophical exploration that is often referred to as the blank page experiment.
Exactly.
We've got a stack of notes and source material here that is, frankly, going to completely reframe how you look at the world around you.
Oh, for sure. It's a heavy one.
We are moving way away from the basic mechanics of just daily survival, and we are going into a radical reimagining of human potential.
It's a profound thought experiment, really, because it forces you to strip away all those deeply ingrained assumptions that we just carry around every single day.
Right. The things we take for granted.
Yeah, because we rarely question the foundational architecture of our society, mostly because we were just born into it.
It feels as permanent as gravity, right?
Exactly like gravity. But this material completely challenges that permanence.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material insists there's a central question we absolutely must answer before we even draw a single line on that blank blueprint.
Yeah, and it's a big question.
Right. We have to answer, what is civilization actually for?
Yeah.
Which, on the surface, sounds way too simple. Like, if you stop someone on the street and ask them what civilization is for, the baseline answer is usually just, well, survival.
Right. So we don't freeze in the dark.
Exactly. Or, get eaten by predators.
And that survival imperative is really where the standard logical progression begins in the text.
Right.
The sources walk us through this very common narrative. Basically, we start with survival. Civilization creates a barrier between us and the harshness of nature.
The walls, the fire, the roof.
Right. But once you secure survival, you naturally seek prosperity.
Right.
You move from just, hunting for today's meal to cultivating a surplus of food.
And from prosperity, the traditional narrative says we move to progress. Because we have that surplus of food, we suddenly free up time. We can build better tools, we can construct permanent shelters, develop complex language, all that stuff.
And the final step in that assumed progression is that progress inevitably leads to happiness, or at least like a fulfilling existence.
Right.
So it goes survival to prosperity to progress to happiness.
It sounds like a very clean, straightforward staircase.
It does.
But the text aggressively challenges this. The argument here is that by treating each of those steps as merely a path toward the next thing, we've entirely lost sight of the ultimate goal.
We really have.
The sources use this analogy of a desert traveler, which honestly completely clicked for me.
It's such a good analogy.
Right. So think of someone trying to cross a vast, brutal desert. To survive that crossing, the traveler absolutely needs water. It is a non-negotiable tool for the journey.
You literally die without it.
Exactly. But survival is not the destination. The water is just the fuel keeping them walking. The actual destination they are trying to reach lies somewhere entirely beyond the desert.
And we can see exactly how that maps onto our current society.
Yeah, how so?
Well, our modern civilization is essentially a traveler who has become so completely obsessed with hoarding water that they've forgotten where they were originally trying to go in the first place.
Wow, yeah, we just sit in the desert counting canteens.
Exactly. We've become fixated on measuring the measurable rather than the meaningful. Just consider the primary metrics we use to define a successful country or a thriving civilization today.
We look at gross domestic product.
Right.
We look at economic growth, quarterly profits, manufacturing output, consumer spending.
We measure the water.
We totally measure the water.
We treat those metrics as the final destination rather than the temporary tools they were always meant to be.
Yeah.
And this raises a really important question, right? Why is humanity so universally prone to mistaking the tool for the purpose?
Well, and this isn't just a philosophical failing, is it?
Yeah.
Because the sources point out there is an actual biological mechanism driving this obsession with metrics.
Yeah, it is deeply rooted in our biology, specifically the brain's dopamine pathways.
Okay, the dopamine pathways.
Right. So most of us are familiar with dopamine being labeled the pleasure chemical, but neuroscientists understand it much more accurately as the anticipation and motivation chemical.
Oh, interesting. So it's not about the reward itself.
Not really, no. Dopamine fires most intensely, not when we actually achieve a goal, but when we are anticipating a reward. when we are approaching a milestone.
Got it. So it evolved to keep early humans motivated. Like if you are tracking an animal or foraging for berries, you absolutely need that internal chemical drive to keep moving.
To keep seeking, exactly.
Right.
But in the context of late-stage civilization, that exact same biological system causes a massive mismatch.
Because our environment is so different now.
Exactly. The brain's reward system fires for the pursuit of wealth, for hitting a quarterly growth target, for seeing a number go up on a digital spreadsheet.
Just watching the line go up.
Right. But the actual arrival at that milestone rarely brings any kind of lasting fulfillment. The brain fundamentally confuses the endless pursuit of the tool, the endless hoarding of water, with the actual purpose of the journey.
So what does this all mean for us? Are we just trapped in this biological loop of measuring output forever?
It's a tough cycle to break.
It reminds me, honestly, of the mechanics in certain open-world video games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like you buy this massive game, and it has this beautiful, rich world, the complex storyline, amazing characters to meet, and landscapes to explore.
Right, all this incredible detail.
But then the developers include a mechanic where you can mine for gold.
The dreaded gathering mechanic.
Yeah. Yes. And suddenly, you find yourself standing in a dark virtual cave for 6 hours straight, just pressing a button to swing a virtual pickaxe.
Yep.
You're obsessively watching your gold score tick up from 10,000 to 11,000 to 12,000. You aren't exploring the world at all.
You're definitely not experiencing the story.
Exactly. You have completely forgotten to actually enjoy the game itself just because your dopamine receptors got hijacked by watching a measurable score go up.
That is a remarkably accurate modern translation of the trap.
It feels so real.
The number goes up, the brain gets a hit of dopamine, and you just keep swinging the pickaxe, completely ignoring the larger, richer reality you are situated in.
Right.
But recognizing that we are just swinging pickaxes in a cave is really the first step to escaping it. If we accept that our current metrics, endless growth, maximizing profit, relentless output, are just a dopamine mirage.
Then we have to ask the core question of the blank page experiment.
Exactly. What is the real destination?
And the text proposes a definitive answer for this.
Yeah.
It argues that the true purpose of civilization, destination beyond the desert, should be maximizing human potential, period.
Maximizing human potential as the foundational operating principle. I mean, that is a massive paradigm shift.
It is. And honestly, this is where I feel like I have to step in and push back a little bit.
Sure.
Because the skeptic in me, and probably the skeptic listening to this right now, is looking at this argument and feeling slightly defensive.
I get that.
We are sitting here critiquing the current design of civilization as if it's this huge failure. But look at what this so-called flawed system, driven by economic growth and competition, has actually achieved.
Oh, the list of achievements is undeniably staggering.
Right. I mean, we have modern medicine that has doubled human life expectancy. We have mRNA vaccines developed in months.
Global supply chains?
Yes.
Yeah.
Supercomputers in our pockets that can access the entirety of human knowledge. We have spacecraft currently operating outside of our solar system.
It's wild to think about.
We split the atom. We map the human genome. Doesn't the current system, the one focused on productivity and growth and measurable output, doesn't it deserve a massive amount of credit?
It definitely does.
It just seems a little unfair to call it a failure when it produces literal miracles.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the source material actually addresses that exact skepticism.
Okay, how so?
It doesn't ask us to tear down those achievements at all, and it certainly doesn't pretend they don't matter. Instead, it frames the critique through this analogy of a master mechanic.
A master mechanic.
Right. So imagine a highly skilled mechanic examining a car engine. The mechanic leans in, checks the thermal loss, measures the friction, listens to the timing belt, and concludes, this engine is running incredibly inefficiently. We are losing a tremendous amount of kinetic energy.
Well, the mechanic isn't saying that because they hate engines.
Exactly. And they aren't denying that the engine successfully drove the car 100 miles down the road. They are pointing out the inefficiency because they understand the underlying physics.
Right.
They know how much better, how much faster, and how much further the engine could run if it were properly tuned.
That makes a lot of sense.
Questioning the design of civilization isn't born out of a hatred for civilization. It's the mechanic looking at the system and realizing that despite all our incredible achievements, despite the moon landings and the global communication networks,
We're still operating at a tiny fraction of our true capacity.
precisely. The goal isn't to deny the miles we've traveled, but to illuminate what is being left entirely untapped.
Which brings us to the exhaust of that engine. To understand why the mechanic wants to rewrite the blueprint, we have to really look at the waste.
And it is a lot of waste.
Yeah, and the source argues that the greatest waste on Earth right now isn't unused oil reserves or unmined lithium or wasted electricity. The greatest waste on Earth is unused human intellect.
It is a staggering inefficiency when you view it through the lens of human capacity rather than just economic output.
Totally. The notes drop some specific historical names to make this concrete. Like, we are asked to imagine if Albert Einstein had been born into a situation where he had to spend his entire life just desperately trying not to starve to death in a famine.
Right.
Or imagine if Marie Curie had been born in a time or place where she was completely denied access to basic education simply because of her gender or her social class.
Or Nikola Tesla. I mean, imagine if he was never given the resources, the laboratory space, or the environment to explore all his abstract ideas about alternating current.
Yeah.
And instead had to spend his entire life working a manual labor job for 14 hours a day just to pay rent.
And the devastating truth highlighted in the text is that these aren't just fun little hypotheticals.
No, they are statistical certainties.
Right. For every Einstein, Curie, or Tesla that our civilization actually managed to filter through to the top, there were likely millions of minds with equal cognitive potential who were just completely lost.
Lost to extreme poverty.
Lost to war, lost to systemic discrimination, or simply lost because they just had absolutely no free time to think.
The material paints this picture of a ghost ship of lost geniuses, which is just such a haunting image.
It really is.
Society throws parades, it hands out Nobel Prizes, and builds statues to celebrate the brilliant minds it actually manages to find. But it rarely pauses to mourn the geniuses it lost, primarily because they're completely invisible to us.
We don't know what we're missing.
Right. We will never know what symphonies were never written, what clean energy technologies were never invented, or what medical cures were never discovered, simply because the people who would have created them were too busy just trying to survive the desert.
Wow. And this connects directly to the psychological concept of the blank slate theory that's discussed in the material.
Yes, the blank slate.
The idea that when a child is born, they don't arrive with a pre-programmed definition of success or a preset genetic limit on their societal value. They arrive as a genuinely blank page,
Right.
full of curiosity, innate creativity, and just this incredible capacity to learn.
They possess immense neuroplasticity. But as they grow, their subconscious just absorbs the architecture of the environment around them.
They absorb the economic realities.
Yep. The systemic barriers, the cultural expectations. If a child is born into a system that implicitly tells them they are only valuable based on how much manual labor they can produce or how much debt they can take on, their potential is immediately bottlenecked.
Because the environment either acts as a catalyst for their inherent potential or it suffocates it entirely.
Exactly.
I want to highlight a really profound observation from the notes here regarding how we've historically justified suffocating that potential.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Yeah, the source points out how deeply entrenched belief systems, and specifically various religious and cultural frameworks throughout human history, have often framed poverty, systemic struggle, and immense hardship as divine tests.
Oh, absolutely. The narrative that suffering is somehow a spiritually necessary crucible. It's a very old, very effective way to maintain the status quo.
Right. But the text asks us to really pull that idea apart. It challenges you, the listener, to ask, what if these aren't divine tests at all?
Right, what if they're not?
What if a child starving or a brilliant mind being wasted in a sweatshop isn't some cosmic spiritual exam designed to test their soul, but simply a catastrophic failure of civilization's design?
It is a radical reframing of human suffering. It really takes the burden of systemic failure off the shoulders of the cosmos and off the shoulders of the individual who's just struggling to survive.
And places it squarely on the blueprint of the society we actively built.
Exactly. If we design the machine, we are responsible for its exhaust.
So let's look at the mechanics of changing that blueprint.
Yeah.
If we accept this premise, if we accept that the lost potential of millions of people is a design failure and not just some inevitable tragedy of the human condition, how do we actually rewrite it?
That's the big question.
What happens to the daily mechanics of our lives if civilization shifts its foundational purpose and becomes a platform for human flourishing instead of just a giant economic engine?
Well, that is the pivotal question of the blank page experiment. If you change the core metric from maximizing profit to maximizing human potential, the entire hierarchy of societal values just has to invert.
Okay.
And the source outlines exactly how that inversion ripples through a society.
So let's get into the weeds on this. What does that inversion actually look like in practice? Because it can't just be an empty philosophical slogan, right?
No, mechanically, it changes the way resources are allocated from the ground up.
Okay.
According to the source, in this redesigned civilization, education naturally becomes more important than social status or wealth accumulation. But it's a very different kind of education.
How so?
It isn't just about training workers to operate the machinery of the economy. It is about the genuine cultivation of the mind. Curiosity essentially becomes the primary currency.
Because if your goal is maximizing potential, you want as many minds actively exploring as possible rather than just like memorizing rote tasks.
Precisely. Furthermore, health, both physical and mental health, becomes fundamentally more important than profit.
Which is a huge shift.
Massive.
Yeah.
In our current model, healthcare is often treated as an industry designed to generate revenue. In an inverted model, you literally cannot maximize a human being's potential if they are chronically sick, stressed, or broken.
Just logically impossible.
Right. So the system naturally prioritizes preventative well-being over quarterly earnings. You would see radical shifts in urban design, work hours, food production, literally all geared toward optimizing human health rather than minimizing corporate costs.
This means knowledge beats hierarchy. Opportunity beats privilege. But, to actually implement this, we'd have to re-examine literally every assumption we have about how a basic Tuesday morning works.
We really would.
We'd have to rethink the very nature of work itself. Like, in our current blueprint, work is mostly a mechanism to generate profit for someone else, or just to earn enough capital to survive.
Yeah, to buy the water for the desert. Exactly. If we invert the model, work has to become an avenue for self-actualization. We'd have to rethink ownership, competition, power, even our basic everyday definition of what it means to be a success.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are talking about is transforming civilization from a machine into an incubator.
Ooh, a machine into an incubator.
Right. Think about the fundamental difference between those two things. A machine evaluates a part based entirely on how much work it can extract from it until it eventually breaks.
Right.
An incubator, however, is designed to provide the exact right conditions. The right temperature, the right nutrients, the right protection from external shocks for something to actually grow.
An incubator doesn't extract, it nurtures.
It nurtures, and crucially, it embraces unpredictability. A machine wants predictable, measurable output.
Like the GDP numbers.
Exactly. But an incubator understands that if you provide the right conditions, the growth that results will be unpredictable, exponential, and far more resilient. Shifting from a machine mentality to an incubator mentality requires a massive letting go of control on a societal level.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. When you list all those changes out, redefining success, shifting from extraction to incubation, prioritizing opportunity over privilege, it sounds to our modern ears like we are turning the whole world upside down.
It sounds chaotic.
It really does. But the source material makes this quiet, incredibly powerful suggestion. Maybe this isn't turning the world upside down at all. Maybe, for the first time in human history, it will be turning the world right side up.
It is a profoundly compelling conclusion. We've spent millennia building the engine, refining the tools, extracting the resources, and accumulating the water for the desert crossing.
We have so much water now.
We do. The blank page experiment simply asks if we are finally ready to acknowledge that we have enough water, step out of the desert, and actually build the destination we were always meant to reach.
Man, we've covered some massive philosophical ground today, from the dopamine traps of modern economics to the ghost ships of lost historical geniuses. Let's try to bring this all together.
That's good.
The core aha moment here, the thing that I think really anchors this whole deep dive into the sources, is the realization that civilization is not a force of nature. It's not gravity.
Right. It's not the weather.
It is merely a tool that we invented. And because it is a tool designed by us, we have the ultimate power to decide what it actually builds.
We are the architects. The page is only blank if we are brave enough to erase the old lines.
So we want to turn this over to you, the listener. We want you to reflect on your own internal blueprint. When you look at the world around you, what do you genuinely believe society exists to do?
And perhaps more importantly, who taught you that belief?
Right. Did you consciously choose it? Or did you just absorb the limits of the environment you happen to grow up in?
It requires a great deal of intellectual courage to honestly examine the foundational assumptions of the world you live in.
It really does.
But as the source material suggests, if humanity can muster that courage, the future could be vastly more interesting and vastly more human than the past.
We want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. A thought that builds directly on this idea of the ghost ship and the staggering tragedy of unused human potential.
It's a sobering thought.
It is. We've talked about the Einsteins and the Curies who were lost to history because the system failed them. But let's bring it closer to home.
Okay.
If civilization is currently designed to measure the profitable rather than the meaningful, what hidden talent, what quiet passion, or what piece of your own potential have you left entirely untapped, simply because society told you it couldn't be monetized?
A haunting question.
Think about what you would build if the page was truly blank. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the blueprints of the world around you. Keep looking for the destination beyond the desert, and we'll catch you next time.